Chapter 13. At 7 in the morning, all the children had assembled down in the sitting room to be assigned their tasks for the day. There they stood, hair shabby, red-eyed and yawning, while Miss Turrell and Mr. Corbin, another of the wardens and the only other acting teacher, assigned them to their morning tasks. When she reached their group, Miss Turrell simply pointed the 4 boys through the foyer toward the front doors. Wandering outside, the boys paused on the raised dais to look out over the front garden which spread out beneath them. Beyond the crushed gravel driveway that ringed the front lawn, they saw that virtually overnight, the giant oak had shed its canopy and covered the front lawn in a thick layer of dead leaves. "Well, thanks for nothing, you big bastard," Lewis grumbled at the tree. A wheelbarrow had been parked in the centre of the lawn like a rowboat drifting at sea. Several metal rakes lay balanced across its top like oars. The boys' task had been made clearly evident. Lewis continued to grumble as they made their way down the dais steps, but stopped when Token clicked his tongue. "Be grateful, man," the dark boy said. "Mallory was expecting us in the fields today, and after yesterday," he shot Vivian a wary look, "he'd be breathing down our necks." "Breathing vodka down our necks, you mean?" Lewis shivered. "That old drunk smells like a kerosene rag." He suddenly burst into a familiar tune, his voice high and clear. "This old man, he played me. He farts blue flames constantly." The other 3 boys laughed as they trod across the sea of red and orange. Lewis's rendition of the classic nursery rhyme bounced off the distant hills and returned as a mocking cackle. Kicking leaves out of their way, the group reached the wheelbarrow and Token took charge. It was worked out that he, Vivian, and Lewis would rake the leaves into small piles while Tank, the bigger and stronger of the 4, would push and empty the wheelbarrow onto the burning heap when required. They worked for several hours under a platinum sky, talking and laughing. Even when a cold, bitter wind came in low over the treetops and blew their piles up into their faces, they joked and struggled on. "I'm telling you, man, this place ain't so bad," Lewis said cheerfully. "Compared to lugging trash bags between Limbo, this place is a hotel." "Limbo?" Vivian raised an eyebrow. "Foster homes," Token explained. "You don't remember your parents at all?" Vivian said, falling in beside Lewis. The boy shook his head. "Genuine child of the state, compañero." "Compañero?" "It's Spanish," Token called over his shoulder. "Our boy Lewis is a self-proclaimed Mexican." "Self-proclaimed my ass," Lewis snapped. "It was on my birth certificate, smart guy." Vivian's mind was working fast as he scooped an armful of leaves into the wheelbarrow. With Token close-lipped about the mysteries of Murkwater for the time being, he wanted to find another source of information. Lewis seemed like the perfect choice. He was a loudmouth, eager to find approval, and if handled right, could become a natural tattletale. Vivian looked across at the sharp-featured boy and said in a friendly tone, "Say, Lewis, you still settling those gingerbread men?" Lewis looked up, his regular sneer replaced with a bright salesman's smile. "Sure am. You ready to buy one?" "Sure will," Vivian answered with an equal enthusiasm. He leaned forward on his rake. "If you can tell me why I would need one." Lewis hesitated. "Say what?" "You know, I've seen things like that in movies before," Vivian explained. "You take a piece of clothing, a ribbon or some hair, tie it round the doll, then it's like the doll becomes the little version of you, yeah?" The Mexican boy found his footing quickly. "Sure, best protection there is." "But protection against who?" Vivian said. Lewis glanced at Token, who, Vivian noticed, narrowed his eyes slightly. It was clearly a sensitive topic for both boys, he decided, but this was a critical moment. Vivian's reputation as a hard case wouldn't allow him to shy away from the truth simply because it was uncomfortable. "Is it for Forest Green?" he tried, recalling what Amber had said in the sitting room. "Is it to fool him?" Lewis had been wearing the raven feather he found the day before like a trophy. He had kept it tucked behind his ear where it would have been invisible against his black hair if not for his shaved sides. Now he removed it and stroked its blade with his thumb in an almost superstitious gesture. "That's the idea," he said carefully. "None of that kindergarten basura. It's genuine PM." "PM?" Vivian repeated quizzically. "Peasant magic cobweb," Tank grunted. He shouldered past Vivian with enough force to make him stagger. "Don't strain your little brain." "Ah," Vivian recovered without missing a beat and slapped the giant on the back. "Thanks, Tiny. I'll call you next time I need a dictionary." Tank growled out a curse and started to turn toward Vivian, but at that moment, Lewis let out something between a sigh and a moan. "Oh, God damn it." Vivian heard the familiar rumble of a car engine and turned to look at the ring road. A large, white van was slowly creeping up the leaf-strewn gravel driveway toward the great house. A first glance at the vehicle had him thinking of an ambulance with its high roof, black panel windows, and roof rack emergency lights. However, the vehicle featured no markings of any kind and didn't seem to be in any kind of hurry as it parked in front of the entrance stairs. "Who is it for?" Lewis whined. Tank moved up behind him, and uncharacteristically put one of his big hands on Lewis's shoulder in a comforting gesture. "Who do you think?" he said in a low voice. Token shook his head slowly. "It's not Callum. I saw him at roll call." Turning his back to the van, as if unwilling to see what came next, he bent and began raking again. "Nothing to be done about it now." The other two followed suit, both with stony expressions on their faces, but Vivian heard Lewis mutter, "It's because Callum carried Forrest's favour." Vivian continued to stand where he was and watched the van. One of the doors opened, and what looked to be a paramedic in white coveralls climbed out. "What's going on, guys?" he said to the group behind him. "I'd get back to work, Cobweb," Token called. "We ain't supposed to be around to see this." A second paramedic in white had joined the first. Small by the distance, they moved around to the rear of the vehicle and opened the rear doors. One climbed inside the cab and slid out a stretcher trolley. "See what?" Vivian countered. "Who are they?" Tank, his brutish face dark with anger, seized the handles of the wheelbarrow in his fists and lifted, turning it on its wheel. "If you're still standing there when I get back," he snarled at Vivian, "you won't be able to stand for the rest of the day." Vivian jumped aside as he barreled past, grunting as the metal edge of the barrow scraped his hip. "What the fuck, man?" he cried, staring at Tank's broad shape. The big boy ignored him, trundling into the distance. Vivian swung his attention back to the other two boys, both resolutely working away. The change in their behaviour had come fast as flicking a light switch, one moment amiable and talkative, next minute hostile and secretive. Vivian, who that morning had felt so secure in his position, so certain that he was one of their pack now, began to feel very much on the outside again. He realized that there was something tangible between these boys that was not being shared with him, and if he wanted part of it, then he had better stop trying to gain respect and start trying to build some trust. "Come on, guys," he said, softening his tone. "Look, no matter what my caseworker says, I'm probably not getting out of here anytime soon." "That's for sure," Lewis muttered. Vivian's heart sank a little at that confirmation, but he pushed on. "Right. So it's fair to say that we're all in this together now, yeah?" Token looked up and watched him without saying a word. Vivian tried to read the dark boy's expression, but saw nothing but the same apathetic glaze he had seen in the eyes of the kids the day before. On the edge of the lawn, a gust of wind wound its way through the twisted, knotted trees with a low moan. All three boys glanced nervously toward the patches of gloom between the fungi-coated trunks. The big oak waved its creaking branches above them like a grotesque sea creature. "Get back to work, Vivian," Token said, his eyes still fixed on the trees. "You get your answer once we get to the burning heap."